Good evening, everybody. This is Professor Mani on behalf of the Bombay Management Association, welcoming you to the annual HR Convention 2020. I'm sure most of us who've been meeting Saturday after Saturday, having started on 15th August, now realize that the HR Convention in this digital format is in its third session today. As part of the deliberations today, we have two leaders who I believe have created a mark for themselves in the digital HR space. Emrana Sheikh from Johnson & Johnson and Dr. Rajesh Save are here with us this evening. And as usual, our charismatic leader of this entire convention, Yogi Sriram, is here to set the ball rolling for us. As we do, we will provide another 2 minutes for participants to come in, assuming that there is neck congestion. Today, no one can complain of rains and traffic jams in Bombay because all of us know that this is no more an acceptable excuse. But I think neck congestion is here to stay for a couple of days, weeks, or months to come. Having said that, let's take another 2 minutes to just settle down, pick up your cup of tea or coffee if you choose, and then we shall begin this third session of the BMA Annual HR Convention 2020. Thank you very much, each one of you, for having joined us this evening for this program. Good evening again and welcome to this third session of our BMA Annual HR Convention 2020. I'm delighted once again to have this privilege to introduce our convention director, Mr. Yogi Sriram. I keep saying this time and again, but it is something we need to reiterate. Very difficult to introduce him, though one normally would believe if you were in the HR fraternity and didn't know Yogi, you need to actually rethink whether you are an HR professional. An alumnus of the prestigious Tata Institute of Social Sciences, over the last 3.5 decades have served very senior positions in industry across a cross-section of different industry segments. Of course, Yogi and L&T are inseparable, and therefore even today, his main role in Larsen & Toubro is advisor to the chairman and managing director. And I guess that ensures that all the wonderful HR policies that were created under his tutelage still continue to help L&T be that wonderful company that it is. Yogi has been on the advisory board of several management institutes, has been part of several conventions. I'm sure he's done 50 plus for organizations like IMA, NIPM, ISTD, NHRDN, and of course, has always been a friend, philosopher, and guide to the Bombay Management Association. Over to you, Yogi, to lead this third session of the BMA HR Convention. Thank you.
Thanks, Professor Mani, with almost killing me with embarrassment, but very kind of you to share all those nice things. And thank you very much for being so nice to me on a Saturday afternoon. A few words about the topic itself before I try to introduce the two speakers. Today, I think in the last about 4 months, we've got an opportunity, we've had the opportunity to really introspect a lot about how digitalization, how computers, and how working from home can have really changed our lives. And I think in the current situation, particularly in the current situation, which we don't know how long will extend, I think the insights that one gets from learning, whether it is through digital learning or whether it is analysis by using uh, methods like R, or whether it is just crunching numbers and getting to know patterns of behaviors. I think it's very, very, very pertinent to learn more about it and to chat about it. I think learning and development has gone through a sea change. We have now, we had about a year or two back something called learning management systems, which were very popular. I mean, most of the ERP systems had a module on learning management systems. But today we've graduated to recommendatory platforms, which are called learning management platforms, which actually like an Amazon or like a eBay or whatever recommend to you new nuggets of knowledge and intuitively figure out uh, through machine learning and through its own algorithms about what is it that you need to learn and what is it that would interest you, which is very interesting. So if I, let's say, want to know more about loading a F6 Nikon with film of the old world film, the real film, I mean, I'll get hundreds of YouTubes on it, and I'll also get recommendations of those who have uh, been doing this, have also been doing that and stuff, just like you have on Amazon. So it's that's a big, I would say, step. And I think besides all the digitization, people have also got used to a medium which was very, which is not so popular earlier. Classroom was easy to see and to experience, so it was much better to go there. And podcasts and things like that were rarely used. But today, I think we're getting more and more used to that. The second point is that digitization has become very interesting. I mean, it's interesting because you can use gamification, you can use a whole host of methods to engage with our people and to make learning much more interesting. So now in the new world, they're using words like phygital, which is a combination of physical and digital, so that this so-called blended learning becomes much easier. This happened even during pre-COVID. And now, of course, the tendency is much more towards digital. But we are talking about the mature corporate world. We are talking about adult learning. And I think what is happening very quietly in India is a kind of a revolution, because there are people who are still on the margins of income, just about, who are using smartphones, sharing smartphones in a family of 6 or 7. And we can't forget about the valiant efforts they're making. Just like in the older days, there was hardly any light, or there was a school perhaps without a proper floor where people went and studied. Now there are rudimentary techniques of digital which people are using and hungry to lap up, and we have a very young population, so that's happening. So the objective of today's session, and we have two very distinguished guests to chat about it, is to explore about what can digitalization do to HR. There are a whole host of good things. You can use it for recruitment, you can use it for predicting behavior, you can use it for engagement. You can also remind yourself that algorithms with biases baked into them are extremely dangerous, and it can only multiply and will probably exaggerate any of the biases that we have. So all that and more is what the two, I'm sure, are going to discuss, which is going to be a real treat to us. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce Emrana Sheikh. Emrana is the Enterprise HR Head for India and South Asia at Johnson & Johnson. What is not written in the 4 or 5 points that have been taken down by my secretary for me is that she is a postgraduate in nuclear physics, and she has a very, very strong science background. So everybody's talking about STEM, and Imrana is actually one of those HR people. Yesteryear, it was rare to find. Now you find a lot of engineers also coming into HR. But Imrana is definitely a strong science background kind of person. And from whatever I hear her speaking, she's extremely analytical and so on. So her broad-based experience of more than 25 years in transformational and strategic HR management, OD, employee branding, engagement, and change management within matrix organization structures, has rich experience across healthcare, automotive, has worked in Mahindra, FMCG, express transportation, agriculture, equipment, and media, comprising of 16 years in service industry and 9 years in manufacturing industry. Adept at devising and implementing coherent HR strategy across global markets, proven success in achieving integration of HR programs, and has worked for big marquee brands such as Asian Paints as Vice President HR, Mahindra & Mahindra as Senior GM HR, and now in Johnson & Johnson. Dr. Rajesh Save, co-founder of Centroid Analytics, a good friend of mine and very close colleague when he worked for L&T Infotech, got his doctorate from the University Department of Applied Psychology under A.M. Dolke, who was the Deputy Director of IBPS then from the University of Mumbai. Consultant for people analytics and for globally reputed firms, has implemented machine learning algorithms for prescriptive and predictive analysis to address HR issues. Is a visiting faculty for people analytics and machine learning in NMI MS University, conducts workshops on machine learning and people analytics, member of the Board of Studies for IT for National Insurance Academy. His specialties are talent analytics, data science, applied statistics, competency identification, assessment and development centers, OD, business simulations, psychometrics, balance scorecard, comp and ben, career and succession planning, and HR strategy, and the human side of mergers and acquisition. Rajesh has served in various leadership positions at L&T Infotech, Intel, SL Group, Reliance Industries as well. So over to both of you, and welcome to you, and thank you very much for being with us this afternoon, and we are really looking forward to the treat.
Thank you so much, Yogi, and it's really, really humbling to be amongst all of you and discussing this very important topic. So thanks for having us here.
Thank you.
Well, thanks, and Yogi, again, same thing I would like to say when Professor Mani introduced you. It's too much, actually. I'm feeling very loaded the way you have introduced me. But yes, you know, it's you were one of the you know, contributors to whatever I'm doing today. And I remember we have had discussions regarding these digitizations for quite some time while I was working for Larsen & Toubro Infotech. So thanks for all the support that you've given.
You. So let me fire the opening salvo question, and then the ball can be set rolling by both of you. Tell me, is digitization in HR in terms of predicting human behavior, attrition, whether a person will be a successful recruit or not, is there a danger of going overboard? First of all, how do we leverage it to the hilt? Second is, if we leverage it, is there a danger of going overboard? What are the do's and don'ts in terms of what we should be aware it can do for us and what it can't do for us? Please go ahead.
So you would, Rajesh, do you want to go first?
No, you go, Emrana. I'll follow you.
Yeah, okay. So I always enjoy these panel discussions with Yogi as the moderators because it's always outside the syllabus and out. So, but it's a very apt question, and I think we as HR leaders, do have that ethical dilemma on, where do you leverage technology and what are the dangers of over leveraging it? And we're dealing with human beings, and human beings are a lot more than machines. So obviously there is that mindfulness that needs to be there in the way we leverage technology. Having said that, probably I'll give a couple of examples to say how the power can be unleashed. But at the same time, at the top of it is human judgment, because there is no substitute for human judgment when we are leveraging technology to make a decision, because technology has not propelled so far that there is a substitute for general intelligence. And that's why we human beings are required in the decision-making process. So in terms of predictive analytics, I would give example of, we're kind of leveraging data science to do predictive modeling. And it was very interesting when we ran through the algorithms that we found certain aspects which were predictable, like, for example, the compare ratio or progressions, the speed of progression in the organization, the performance ratings. I think there was some predictable, correlation that we could draw. But there were some very interesting things that emerged out of that study, that there were variables which we had not really thought of. And for example, managers rating. We hadn't seen the connection of managers performance rating on attrition, or learning and development. We all know people love to be part of, but we did not realize in our organization there was such a strong correlation of retention with the learning opportunities people had got. So what I think technology does is that, because of its just sheer power, is able to bring in this entire data ocean and surface some of the insights which our normal human intelligence with just one or few brain powers may not be able to surface. And then after that, what do we do with those insights? The predictive model that we ran told us that, okay, these many people are at 70% and above of retention risk. Now, here's where human judgment comes in. The line manager insights and the BU HR partner that works very closely with this business is able to really validate whether there are some things that we could do to ring fence this talent. Is this talent so important in the given role that they are doing? How do we really engage them if they are at risk? I think that's where I would think it's a hybrid. Technology brings forth insights, but it's human judgment that helps us in making sense out of it. So I kind of had another example, but I'll probably share it in a different context. But over to you, Rajesh.
Oh, thanks, Emrana. And of course, yes, 100% agree. So Yogi, one word answer is yes, definitely. There is a need for human judgment, and I'll give you a couple of examples. So it's all started in 2015 with Credit Suisse, where for the first time they gave list of people with high flight risk to the managers, which eventually saved a lot of money to Credit Suisse, and it became a case study by itself. In fact, there was a huge article in Wall Street Journal at that point in time. So again, same as Emrana said, it basically they gave the probability of the flight risk and not certainty about a particular person is going to quit or not quit. So that's one part of the story. But having said this, Yogi spoke about machine learning and what machine learning does. And machine is a machine, right? So it doesn't have any judgmental capability. So what machine learning does is take data from the past and try and focus for the future in the simplest of the term. Now, what has been happening over a period of last several years, and if you pick up data at random, even at random, from over 10 to 15 years of say, people who have been recruited and then termed as performers for the sake of argument. Okay, what happens is that entire 15 years data that you have collected is again infected with some sort of bias. And I'll touch upon the racial and the gender equality here, over here.
Yeah.
So if you look at the kind of again quote unquote performers that you have picked up, are as it is they were infected, and algorithms based on such kind of past data will always give a biased output. So if I have to recruit people again and again, this is a very objective statement I am making. But if I have to get into the profile of a person who is going to be a performer, the person would be certainly, there are very high chances that the person would be a male, because your past data has had a lot of males, and you've not recruited females for the sake of argument. A particular age group, a particular race, and so on and so forth. Of course, race is not so much relevant in India, but definitely yes, in the US it is. So there's a huge amount of bias which will come with the output that is going to be there coming out of any of the machine learning algorithms. And that's where the human judgment is going to be extremely important. Yes, maybe after a few years when you have some unbiased results which have kind of piled up over a period of time, and after that maybe machine will start thinking about them, so these things. But as of today, I think we should rely only on probability rather than a certainty in terms of the outcomes and outputs of all the algorithms. So that's
so if you don't use digitization or the digital tools that are available, then human biases, unintended biases could enter. If you use it, then the situation could become like the software that I think which was used in USA, which was called, if I'm not wrong, Compass, which was a software to decide which of the jailed prisoners were supposed to get parole or not get parole. And they found after running it for some years that there was an extraordinarily high bias, which was for white Americans. And they were given much more, the frequency of their being given parole was much more than the colored Americans. So one way or the other, you're stuck. So how do you make a choice? And while of course you depend on the probability part, how do you get the right balance between intuition, judgment, and the digital probability which you're throwing up?
Right. I think I'll probably just kind of build on what Rajesh said. It starts with what's the business problem you're trying to address. So it never starts with a technology solution.
Yeah.
So we did not want to get into predictive attrition model because it was the hype these days and everybody is doing it, or a fad. We are doing it because there is a business problem that we want to solve. Now, if you stay true to that spirit of solving a business problem or finding a solution to a conflict, then that ideation helps you to really see what are the solutions. How many of them are technology based and how many of them are probably capability based or mindset based, and you're able to then kind of make the choice between these solutions. So for example, on the bias question, we have a technology which again uses machine learning at its backbone. It's basically a vendor partner that we tied up with. It's Textio. What Textio does is when we open a position in the system and load the job description, it automatically takes us to the Textio page where it tells us whether our language is gender neutral or not. Are we being inclusive in our description of our ask or not? And it identifies replacement words that we could include in the JD so that it is a very inclusive language. Now imagine if I did not have Textio to support me, I would have been blinded by my own internal biases and said that this is a perfect JD. But what Textio is helping me do is question my biases, is question my thinking and improvise and build it in making it more inclusive. So again, it starts with the problem that you're trying to solve. Solution may be technological or not technological, but then how do you really put it all together?
And Rajesh, tell me, I mean, when one talks about digital in HR, the automatic default kind of a thinking goes to reducing manpower, putting it all in some shared services and getting huge cost advantages. Could you, for the audience and me and everybody else, including Emrana and Professor Mani, tell us about what would you see as the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 advantages of getting into a digital initiative for HR, besides the stereotype cost part?
Yeah, definitely, Yogi. So I'll just put forth one a nice example, which will obviously talk about a little bit of a gamification as well. And this is a very innovative stuff that was done by Domino's in the US. And that probably would tell you about how we can. So what happens is at that point in time, Domino's launched an app, an iPad app called Pizza Hero. Now in Pizza, and likewise there are quite a few apps in the market at this point in time as well. So Pizza Hero was basically about making pizzas and stuff like that. Some of us probably would have seen that. So in fact, at a point in time, it was I think the third largest downloaded application on iPad. Even ahead of Skype and DrawMe and things like that. So it was really popular. What the entire data which was collected while doing this, what they did is they selected about 650 odd people who were doing excellent on this the entire pizza thing. Of course, how to make pizza, and it was all on iPad, but the entire know-how of Domino's Pizza. And if they are wrong, they were given less points. If they're correct, they're given more points and stuff like that. So the entire recruitment of those guys actually went on iPad on the app.
Yeah.
and they picked up the 750 odd people. Of course, after that, they did a motor skill test on that, which is for the recruitment purpose. Now, in this case, it was a pure case of gamification. You know, in that sense, they used gamification for pick up, to pick up not employees, but prospects who were already trained on the app itself.
Yeah.
So what they actually did is they the entire training part of the pizza making. Of course, there's a cost, but more than cost, they were getting surely trained people. So there is not even ROI and stuff like that. I'm not talking about cost here, but how to use gamification to even recruit people and recruit trained people and actually train them through gamification. So there are several birds killed in one stone, while using it. So this was a kind of a path-breaking exercise which Domino carried out, and after that there were several other things done by Domino's, being one of the front leaders in using gamification for recruitment, which is very rare case of instance, right? So yes, I mean, considering bias and other things, in this case no bias, because I'm not using any machine learning algorithm which is kind of used in the past. So rather than going back back in the history and pick up performers and their profile and then again recruit on a long term, they basically cut short all that thing and then straight away went ahead with an app and recruited people. So this is one case which came to my mind when you asked that particular question, wherein the bias question was completely knocked off and came up with a brilliant solution. Again, as Emrana said, technology itself provided a solution to the problem which was raised by technology. So I think this is definitely a
I
path.
want to ask both of you a very touchy question. When we talk right now, you can't see me fully. You can see me shoulder up or maybe neck up, and I can't see you fully. I can see you neck up or something. So one of the very important things I think in HR is coaching, counseling people. So point one, in this so-called digital world, when we don't have the advantage of seeing the whole person, and we miss out on a whole lot of non-verbal communication, what should we do? I mean, should there be multiple cameras, or should there be some method of capturing body language, or what exactly should be done? Second is, and if you forget, I will remind you about the second question. The second question is, if there's a troubled mind, I mean, today there is huge stress in companies. People don't know whether there's going to be continuity of their jobs. People don't know about the future. People don't know about when this whole pandemic will end, and everybody's worried about their jobs, their spouses' jobs, all kinds of things. And good old-fashioned counseling had eye contact, had people sitting next to each other, feeling for each other. Can a machine do that? And I mean, to what extent would you like to speak to a mechanical object which says, tell me how you're feeling? Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm exaggerating, but over to you guys.
Difficult question, right? I mean, maybe I'll just share with an example and then pass it on to Rajesh to build on. Like all of us, I've been also working from home for the last 5.5 months, and just 2 days back, there was some work demand which required me to meet in person 2 of my colleagues. The people that I work with, and probably I wouldn't finish my day without spending some time with them. And when I met them for the first time in this 5.5, I've been talking to them very regularly over the Zoom meetings, but seeing them, the full of them, it was so emotional. I had like my eyes fill up with tears. I didn't realize how powerful this connection would be.
Yeah.
And it was almost the same feeling, when I met my son who was stranded in this pandemic in US, and when he returned back home, it was almost, that intensity of feeling. I think nobody can take it from us. We are social creatures. We are made up of, we are a bundle of emotions. We relate to the world, and the world relates back to us. And there is a filter that comes in to this kind of communication. Like if we were together in one room and having this conversation, it had a different flavor. So I don't think so. It's a question of or. We are not going to be substituting this or at least desire that this becomes a permanent, scenario. But we do see that work can happen this way. We do see that the world did not stop in the 5.5 months
Yeah.
just because we did not meet together. We are very creative creatures. We adapt to the new context, and we kind of learned a lot, and COVID has helped us to kind of really do things differently and not let the balls drop. And that's why we have to codify the learnings out of the crisis. So
Yeah.
for me, it is not an option, it is an and, which has got strengthened through technology.
Rajesh, your views on this?
Yeah, sure, sure. So, in fact, same thing. Yesterday I was chatting with Dr. Vyas, Tata Motors. Yogi, you know him very well. You worked
Yeah,
with
yeah.
him.
Mukund,
And
yes,
yeah, Mukund, correct. So, he was saying the same thing. He's been recruiting a lot of people at a very high level, and with the hope again that hopefully, because you haven't had one-on-one meetings, and exactly same thing we're talking about. So quickly, yes, I mean, if there's a solution, yes, there is a solution which is very expensive at this point in time. But again, same thing. The eventual decision making should be done by individual, by taking a gut feel call. And the solution is as follows. So basically, Accenture at some point in time created a POC, a proof of concept of image analytics and facial analytics. So what happens is, and Yogi, you are again, I remember when one of our my interviews, you asked me, all of a sudden you asked me about social learning theory of Albert Bandura. So this is something which I read, I learned, I think, couple of decades ago. And then again, all of a sudden you would have seen my face going little red, of course, Bandura, I remember, but things like. So the point that I want to drive is very simple.
Bandura is the guy who does the Bobo dolls and all that, right?
Yeah. So, the point I want to drive here is that the moment you ask a difficult question or a question which is a little critical, suddenly, there are certain things on your face are changed. Now, if you're really using a very powerful, and which is what Accenture in their POC did, is they were picking up images of people who are entering the office in the morning, and it is a POC, so of course in one of the offices, and through the day and going home, and this is basically to check the engagement of people, whether how much they are engaged, and these images were kind of analyzed over a period of time, and then they said, okay, fine, this is, and then of course they did a survey, and then they did a validity check of survey being a independent variable, and your images being a dependent variable. So the point I want to drive is, yes, you can, and now that I'm talking to you, you are there on the screen, and I can actually take several pictures of you, and again I have another interview, so 3-4 interviews put together. I will have definitely, if we remain like this and a lot of work from home happens, I'm sure, thanks to volume, this kind of TensorFlow of Google does it very effectively, by the way. So a lot of such softwares will come into market, if the volume is there and at a reasonably cheap rates. So, but again, I repeat, the first thing that Emrana said, and of course you said, and we started off with that, ultimately the judgment lies in, it's like, the very famous general of the US Army, General Patton, on whom the Patton tanks were named. Once he said that, wars are fought by using weapons, but they're fought by men. So ultimately, it's people who should take decisions rather than, the weaponry or the armory or all the kind of technology that we have. So yes, there is opportunity, but I think ultimately, your gut feel works, your bias.
What about both of you talking a little bit about employee assistant platforms, where people who are distressed, employees who are disengaged, can speak to someone? I mean, of course, people speak on phones, people speak face to face, but do you think a machine can really help people to achieve higher levels of potential, or help them discover a hostile environment they are in, etc.?
Rajesh, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So, so there are a couple of things, Yogi, here. I think if you look at the generations over a period of time, baby boomers are moving out. The Gen X is again moving out, and the new generation is coming in. The point I would like to put forth here is that this generation is extremely gadget savvy, right? the way they are being reared, definitely their formative, years of early on, they have had a lot of gadgets around with them, and over a
Yeah.
period of time, yes, definitely a machine would start probably impacting. But the kind of employees that we have at this point in time, in terms of the age group, right? I don't think it will work with them because, and I'm not a Freudian. I say that the first 5 years of formative times, they would have. But yes, they are rare. They are born and brought up on the fact that human
Yeah.
element is needed. So I think it's time for us to get into that kind of machine and human communication being so effective. But as of today, for the next at least 10 to 15 years, I'm certain that EAP machine would be there probably maybe as a first, I'm sorry to use the jargon, but first level of ticket escalation. But after that, I think a human intervention is required.
I would draw a parallel with digital surgery.
Right.
And so digital surgery today, the penetration is less than 5%. And it's less about the technology, it's more about the change management. Change management at a surgeon level, change management at a hospital level, change management at a patient level. That it's going to be machines that are going to be employed to kind of correct whatever needs to be corrected in my human anatomy. So it is a change management, and yes, I agree with Rajesh that newer generation of surgeons are more adept, and or it could also be that the Gen X and the baby boomers who are digital leaders themselves, who believe in the power of digital, and those people will embrace it faster. The others, they would be late adopters. Over a period of time, I think human beings will make choices where digital can really add value, and where human beings need to continue adding value. And that's the reason why any future of work report that we pick up, it doesn't say that the entire all the number of jobs are going to disappear. It talks about jobs which require a lot of emotional intelligence are going to stay, and are going to be driven by human beings, but jobs which are more operational in nature, more transactional in nature, where human judgment, can be done at probably a level 1 or a level 2, can be deployed to machines. So hence, in an EAP kind of a scenario, which is a complex, behavioral, discussion or experiential discussion, at least I don't think there is a technology that can substitute a presence of an occupational psychologist on the other side, helping somebody decipher what's going on in their minds and hearts.
Except for allocating perhaps the distressed person to a confidential counselor, like he talked about raising a ticket, Rajesh.
Yeah.
Tell me, I don't want to sound negative about digitization and data, and I'm going to, now generate a whole set of positive questions. But the last negative one, or let's say the one which is important in today's day and age, is about data privacy. Right from the Arogya Setu app, which is supposed to have lots of firewalls and things, and very important in today's times. But many of the apps could be intrusive. And in trying to construct a digital persona, one is actually getting into areas which are very personal to that person. So what if the person has gone through a divorce? So what if the person has, shall we say, left a particular country at a particular point of time? Sometimes the machine can make analogies about this person, because human behavior has so many shades and so many nuances, which could either be wrong or unfair. Because I guess when you talk about total fairness, one has to be absolutely open-minded about whatever is and not delve into only the past. Any thoughts on this?
Yeah. So, Rajesh, is it okay if I go?
Yeah, please.
Okay. It's definitely a big dilemma for us as human beings in terms of where is the boundary. Especially for us in HR, when we talk about technology deployment within organizational context. There is sociometric badging, there is microchipping, there is the concept around facial monitoring and organization network analysis, etc., which sound fantastic when you read in case studies and how certain companies have chosen that path and are trying to make more intelligent decisions out of the information that they have. But I think it depends also about the organizational culture, the values, and what and how do you view this employee privacy. For example, if today almost every two-thirds of all our organizations are working from home, only one-third probably are in essential services or in plants who are operating today. But the remote working population, are we going to be comfortable to have a GPS type of a tracker which is under the shade of productivity? Or are we more comfortable in creating a results only work environment where what matters is what you deliver, how you deliver, when you deliver, what do you do in between your working hours, and what is the definition of the working hours doesn't matter to us. I think these are two thoughts on the spectrum. Depending upon the organizational value system, you may choose one versus the other. And there are several other benefits attached to it. For example, if somebody is on this side where you are tracking me like on GPS, I'm going to only do as much as you tell me to do. I'm not going to put discretionary efforts. Whereas if you create a results only work environment and you trust me, I trust you back. So I think you create a more trusting environment and there could be more discretionary efforts that you can get. So it again boils down to organizational culture where you define that value and the leaders that are on the decision-making seats.
Yeah. Actually, I was also alluding to data privacy, where one is, referring to stuff which because you log into a particular app, others can access the, information that you have. Yeah. It's pretty common nowadays, actually. I mean, right from sending cookies to whatever it is. Yeah. And I was also alluding to creating a digital persona from Facebook and other social networks and stuff, and coming to conclusions on that. Rajesh, and then Emrana, if you like, you can comment on that.
Sure. I think that's extremely important. So I'll just quickly tell you one, very interesting POC that we did way back in 2013, much before even the GDPR came in. Yeah. And GDPR is something which is definitely a detrimental in this. And that exactly what you just said, what we did is, this is for a credit card company. Yeah. And, it was about, who should, the card would be offered. And in the US, you have credit history and a lot of other related areas. So what we did is, while, visiting their, or rather data scrapping from their Facebook, from their Twitter, and other social media accounts, we created the persona on Big Five, which is a very well-known personality inventory. And then we also, so what we did is, people who have been defaulters, we created their persona, and people who have been kind of paying their regular, we created their persona, and we said that, okay, fine, if these are the 7% who may not have a great credit history, they are borderline credit history, but please offer cards to them because they have the same persona as those who have been paying regularly. Right. So this was the POC created then, but after that, the entire GDPR came in, and after that, a lot of data privacy stuff came in. Of course, Facebook stopped allowing you to get into, other way. So the point that I want to, mention over here is that the encrypted analytics is a new field which is coming up now, which basically doesn't allow you to touch any data point which is related to your personality per se, where, there is a chance of breach of the regulation. So I think sooner or later we will have that. But as of now, if you ask me, I mean, India, of course, we don't bother, unfortunately. Whenever I have seen, working on analytics, of course, age, gender, we don't care. And that's something which is extremely important from the encryption purposes. So I think that will come very soon, and hopefully we will have answer to that. Again, as Emrana said right in the beginning, technology finds answer to the problems created by technology. So I think this is another example of how encrypted analytics will kind of overshadow. That's what I feel.
Rajesh, you actually gave just such a strong example, and I just would make a one-liner addition to that. Is that, and that's why cybersecurity risks are becoming so strong, both for organizations and for an individual. You know, we kind of hear about people talking about digital kidnapping because they are trying to create a digital persona of people. And yes, that threat exists, and that's the reason why the choice you make on who in HR has access to what type of data, who in the organization has access to what kind of data, is such a strong governance that organizations need to establish and be very mindful of their choices.
I'd like to construct a little case study for both of you on leadership, because I think this whole topic of digitalization and digitization and how it helps us in selecting the right leader is very important. And I'd like to visit with both of you and the audience and everybody on the call, the great company GE. You know, we had Jack Welch for maybe 18 years or something, a chemical engineer, and Neutron Jack was very well known for his sharp analysis and his ruthless policies in terms of the vitality curve. Took GE to astronomical heights. GE Capital became the main machine for GE doing so well. I think at one point of time it almost competed with the American economy. I mean, the GDP was huge, some 160 170 billion, and it was really big. And then after he left, there was Immelt. I think he was there for about 6 or 7 years. Few wrong acquisitions. That's what the analysts say now. That's what the activist shareholders said. And perhaps also trying to live in the shadow of someone who did things in the past in a particular way. Started a very ambitious vertical for GE, which was on digitalization, and took some very, very interesting decisions of hiring talent of Bill Rue, for example, from Cisco, if I remember right. And there was a huge kind of talk that GE is going to become a software company. Then they acquired Alstom and whatnot. It didn't work. He left. Then came for some time Flannery, 14 months. The kind of background he had was country manager India, worked in Delhi in IFAX Hall, and was supposed to be a good man for M&A, finance kind of a bent. There were issues in the sense that decisions were being delayed and stuff, a lot of past decisions were being reopened, and GE lost a lot. By this time, the GE share value had come down to less than half of what it originally was, less than half. And then, of course, came Larry Culp from Danaher, from outside the corporation. And it's yet to be seen about what is going to happen. What is your comment about how digitalization could work for leadership, course changes, decision making, selection? Any scope?
Emrana, can I? Okay, so let me think of an example rather than just kind of hypothesizing and thinking of entity data is a company which has taken leadership position in terms of gamification. I think about 5 years ago, entity data came up with something called Ignite Leadership. That's a kind of game which we just started off with. Apparently, it's been working pretty well. But what they did is that, of course, lots and lots of scenarios they created, and it's more of an ipsative ranking kind of stuff. What I mean by that is the options were not right and wrong. They were basically it could be. I mean, that reflects what you think right is. So on several parameters such as negotiation skills and communication, time management, change management, problem solving, that's precisely they had worked on in terms of what their leadership skills. The leadership should have whatever skills, and those are the skills on which the entire scenario building was done. That entire thing was converted into a game called Ignite Leadership. Right. And so a couple of things on that. One is obviously, yes, assessment, right? Second thing is huge amount of data, individual data which was created. So the gamification advantage in this particular case is when you do a classroom kind of training, the unit of analysis is a group.
Yeah.
So you may not get a data, individualized data, but when you have a gamified learning, your unit of analysis suddenly becomes an individual, and then you have an individual based data, right? So apparently, this was probably the first example of, and you're right, soft skills from gamification and digitization perspective are reasonably difficult to gauge. Technical skills, yes, I mean, there are several examples that I can quote here. But I think entity data has really, taken a lead and kind of came up with something which is relatively different. It is, I hear it has been working reasonably well. A lot of polishing is required, and a lot of data is needed in terms of creating the success of algorithms. So, likewise you said, I mean, Jack Welch worked, Jeff Immelt, one doesn't know, Jim Flanley went so fast, and Culp is yet to be done. So unless and until machine has a proven successful data, machine won't be able to predict in the future from a machine learning perspective. But I think in terms of gamification, I think that particular thing is doing reasonably well. Again, I repeat, which again Emrana has been saying, and you have been kind of alluding to that as well, that the last word is going to be based on some sort of judgmental call. But I think it is giving loads of data about personality of those leaders, and there are about 65 in the first lot entity data. 65 of them participated, and over a period of time, and at the same time, you can also train them on the same engine. So that's something which is an advantage, I think. But yeah, I mean, that's what they're doing for leadership.
It's interesting, Imran. We started the first session with the elements of human judgment, and how do managers, leaders make good judgments, and we had Mukundarajan on the call. But now we're talking about how can you at least use some kind of a prediction from data to construct that digital footprint about this person, saying, is this person going to fit the culture or not? For example, Larry Culp is the first person GE took from outside the company in the history of GE. I think it's about 160 or 170 years old. It's an old company, started by Thomas Alva Edison. Any thoughts on what role digitization has in leadership?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like, Rajesh spoke about, there is that element of, judgment that comes in everything, including leadership development and leadership assessment and selection. So I would like to give an example of what we are doing right now. We're kind of creating a persona of leader of the future. So what we're trying to do is, there is a flavor of the country, but there is also a large definition of it across geographies, considering the cultural fabric of the organization. And the kind of industry we are, and the kind of capabilities do we need in order to succeed and thrive in the future, and what kind of leaders are required in that definition. In that journey, yes, there is assessment. There are simulation-based, exercises. It's almost like a part of the development center, but it does still anchor around, a judgment around things. But there's also real facts about the performance of this individual, real facts about the impact that these cycles of performance this individual has had, and those are measurable attributes. Generally, I think machine learning is more apt if you're talking about a large number of data points, or you're talking about a large set of people that you would want to assess on. Since you're talking about the top of the pyramid, and it is so very important to make the right decision, and there are so few people and relatively lesser number of data points, I do not really see in the very near future machine learning playing a role there. But you would have richer assessments which kind of help you in defining what kind of leaders will succeed in the future. Like you could have a norm group which is from outside the organization, but in the industry, and or successful leaders in the larger fabric of the country. There could be other data points which could be integrated with your assessment model, but I do not see in the near future machine learning completely replacing this judgment that's required.
There is one related question here, and when we are talking about leaders, we also talk about the followers, if I might
Yes.
use that word. Can we use predictive analytics, particularly to help us in assessing employee well-being? And this is a question from the chat box. I thought I'd pick it up because it's very relevant to what we're discussing.
Sure.
Your views, please.
Yeah. Rajesh, you want to go? I mean, I also have an example, but happy for Rajesh to go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So there is one very interesting, and when you're saying well-being, I would refer to both the psychological and physical more at this point in time, because we are
Yes.
talking of COVID.
Yes.
Now this is reasonably, and in fact, we have about 55 participants. I'm sure they would probably like to replicate for their respective organizations. So this refers to an interesting concept called health index of the organization. So of course, unfortunately, this was not implemented, but this was kind of planned in one of my previous lives. With the use of the insurance services providers, we had negotiated that they would undertake the base level test, CBC, ESR, lipid, and a couple of them, as the offering that they were to, kind of making to us, and twice a year, right? So we had a reasonably good data of the overall levels. Of course, again, I repeat, health data is extremely confidential in the Western world, whereas in India, still we have not reached that particular level yet. But a couple of things, one is again a collective health of the organization basis the various levels that you collect, because the objective, of course, the objective was financial, to reduce the cost of insurance, health insurance to the organization. But again, to know where we are, we created a huge amount of with the help of insurance service provider. Unfortunately, it was not deployed for several reasons. Talking about machine learning over there, then you have a huge amount of data, and this company had several thousand people. So that is something, and then you can kind of say that, okay, fine, people in Mumbai are facing with a particular thing. So you have a geographical cuts, you have gender cuts, you have different kind of cuts in terms of taking certain actions on that as well. So from well-being perspective, yes, definitely, Professor Mani, and it has to be done. In fact, you have spoken something which is extremely important in a post-COVID kind of scenario. I think most of our organizations should get into this. And to start very simple, just don't get into too many of things. Just focus on basic, and then of course over a period of time you can improve. But there's a huge opportunity, and there's a lot of data also available, and clean data without moisture, data without noise, because this data straight away coming from the test. So there's definitely an opportunity. Emrana, over to you.
Just a quick one-liner. I'm conscious about the time. So we have a platform called Healthify Me. So this platform basically is confidential. You can use it for creating your own healthy lifestyle. But what happens at the back, we have that encrypted analytics. So it helps us to kind of see what kind of policies are working, what kind of health index are our employees having. So that's one thing. And the other is we have a voluntary program where people join to improve their health index. So we had about 550 people that joined about 3-4 years back, and we track their health index, how it has improved year over year. And because it's voluntary, it doesn't breach any data privacy norms.
So just to add to Emrana, Professor Mani, Healthify also has integration with wearable devices.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that gives huge amount of data in terms of your heart rates and stuff like that. Number one. Number two, Healthify also offers you nutrition and food related areas. So of course it helps you. So yes, I mean that's a complete platform. Imrana, is probably alluding towards the right thing.
But does it tell you, Rajesh, when you're eating too much cake and stuff like that, nuisance thing like this?
Of course it does. Of course it. In fact, initially in the first version of Healthify, they didn't have much of Indian stuff. So the first question that I was asked is, "Usme idli, dosa, makai ki roti hai kya batao?" It had all, but apparently they have indigenized the entire product by now, and now, that's I think a very good platform.
What else, Maniji? What are the other questions?
There's another extension of the same topic being discussed. You see, whenever we spoke about technology, employees always were a little suspicious as to what is this company attempting to do. Today, when we talk about digitalization, people rightly or wrongly associated with the same bottlenecks that they perceived about technology. How do you visualize HR playing an active role as an enabler to implement digitalization? And what are some of the steps you all have taken or come across in mature organizations which you can share with the participants?
So what, in short, not scaring off people about digitalization, embracing it. So it's all about change management and how one embraces it without, getting worried about my job is going to go and stuff.
So I'll also keep a very crisp answer. We kind of have a huge endeavor in building on digital mindset in the organization, and where HR is one of the members in and there is a cross-functional energy that's going in, and HR is like one part of it. So what it does is it allows you to encourages you and inspires you to role model. Also, we have a huge endeavor within HR to build digital capabilities, and also for business, depending upon which functional stream that they belong. So we have a digital academy, which we leverage, and then run competition and, as things which will help people not get scared of it, but, and think that it is only meant for people who have got an IT background, but it's meant for everybody. Technology is meant for everybody. I think those are a couple of things that we are doing.
So, Professor Mani, Direct TV has a very interesting case study from this perspective. What they did, and obviously, yes, again, they took help of gamification. I think that comes extremely handy when it comes to, any kind of change management or a behavior modification kind of intervention. So what they did is they created something called failure vault, which basically, there were a lot of projects which are failure, and failure was seen as something which is a taboo. Rather than learning out of that, it is basically, so I think the first, phase, they released about 120 odd cases which were basically failures. And whoever, a very nice concept, they started using something called premortem. So basically it's like postmortem and premortem. So reading that case, you have to do a premortem, those who are participating in that particular game. And you have to come up with all the possible failures that you can see in the future. And the more points that, so there were points exactly like any other gamification story, you are allotted badges and points and stuff like that. And it became a huge rage in Direct TV at that point in time to kind of come up with different, in fact, any, in this case, failure was one thing. But if you are implementing, a new, ERP tool, for example, resistance to change is always there, whether the ERP is going to take my job or something like that. I think the first, thing that an organization should do is use the gamification to get rid of that particular fear first. And since it is a gamified content, people would kind of definitely participate in that. And I think a sense of achievement, it's just like, Nike did when they introduced that new shoe, series of shoes. They put that, sensor in the shoe and then number of steps and all that kind of stuff. So it helps really well in terms of, basically to avoid resistance to change and deploy some new intervention in your organization.
Sure. Another good question is, how do you balance, especially in the current scenario and what's going to happen when Unlock rolls out nationally? How do I balance high tech with high touch to ensure that the employee still feels emotionally attached to the organization?
I don't have much of a clarity on this question, but I'm just kind of interpret and then I'll answer. So it's basically, is it saying that because of digital intervention, the emotional touch is kind of tapering off, and that's where, how do you make it still part of, so there are a few things, one thing, again, I'll go back to my previous, argument that I said, that as the generations are passing by, the definition of emotional touch is also kind of going away. I'm sorry, I stand corrected. The definition of human touch is changing over a period of time, right? So I think that is something which needs to be considered. We have to consider that as well. The kind of behavior pattern that I see. So I teach in NMIMS, and I often, last about 3 batches I've seen and few other generations I've seen. I think the behavior pattern is completely different. At this point in time, if you kind of try to get everything together, then probably it will be unfair, not unfair, but it will be, it won't fit in well with that particular generation. There are various ways and means of, taking care of this. I don't remember this particular case. I don't remember the name of the company, but what they did is they created dependencies
Hmm.
because they wanted to force people to talk to each other. And that entire process of creating dependencies actually created good amount of clicks across the globe. So there's someone who is sitting in Philippines was continuously chatting with someone sitting in UK because of the dependencies in that particular, again, it was gamified content. So that's how they managed it. So I don't think anything else can really, Imran, if you have done something in your organization, you can talk about.
Yeah, I'll just again try to keep it crisp. We've actually, while a lot of technology companies have gone out and said that, we are going to be announcing work from home for another 2 years, or, a kind of a prolonged time. We have actually made more of a communication internally to tell people that we will be employing workspace practices which encourages collaboration, and because it's an organization which thrives on innovation, and we will be kind of having our formats of work arrangement which will fuel into this innovation. So what we are doing is, for this, there is a certain section of our employees which is manufacturing plants continue to be in the plants and operating. But we are, for the others, we are actually doing a lot of work around how do we have connected workspaces. But our workplace will always be there. Maybe the size, shape of it will change with the learning from post-COVID, depending upon how long it continues. But we kind of want to kind of articulate and say that need is very important, which is the business need, employee need, and connections for collaboration. All of these three things are important, and that's where we are anchored right now on.
I think that's a great perspective. Yogi, like to continue?
Just wanted to check with both the speakers about this whole thing about being inclusive. There is a digital divide in our country. And, even in spite of our attempts to try and get everybody included, I alluded to that point in the beginning also. But it's very heartening that there's this lady who sells flowers in the street who has just one smartphone for 4 children that she has. Is this going to exaggerate the divide, which is already very, very huge in our country, between the so-called haves and the have-nots? Any thoughts? I mean, it's a very philosophical question, and there are no quick answers. But any thoughts on how one should address this?
You're right. It's a very broad question, and I think from an organization point of view on how do you become more inclusive, we are kind of driving a lot of equalizing conversations. So, for example, we realize when you're working from home.
Sorry, let me make it easy, Emrana.
Yeah.
Easier, sorry. Let's talk within Johnson & Johnson itself.
Yeah.
You have Salesforce who are feet on the street. You have people in the offices who are more static. There itself, there's a divide, isn't it? There's an opportunity for them to, look at the screens much more, learn a new skill and stuff. Those with feet on the street are 4 to 5 hours traveling long distances and stuff with masks on, looking tired, getting off motorcycles and stuff. I mean, I'm talking about even the divide within the company.
Right. So I think it's all governed by the need of the job and the choice people make on which job they will do. And then it's the responsibility of the leaders and the organization to make it as fair and equitable as possible. So when you define policies, especially in the COVID era, what's the spirit of this definition of the policy? How inclusive are they? Are they being considerate of all the multiple lenses that are there? So for example, ergonomic, reimbursement right now that you're enabling, you're doing it for the people who can work from home. You can't do it for people who can't work from home. But the way it's positioned is that it's a job need requirement. It's not a perk to get. So I think I would think that organizations need to continue, really reflecting on, are they being inclusive in the way they're deciding on their policy and policy frameworks? as we navigate through the balance phase of the COVID. It's going to be an ongoing journey, but at the same time, keep employees having the freedom to choose the kind of career paths that they want to take within the organization. Somebody in the manufacturing plant doesn't need to be necessarily always in manufacturing plant. I think if you are able to give that flexibility to people, then people settle with the fact that it's a choice that they have made in being in a role which has these constraints.
Hmm.
So Yogi,
Yes.
I feel it's like necessary evil. The
Hmm.
divide is definitely there, and nobody. But I'm an eternal optimist. So if you look at say circa 2015 to 2018, pre-COVID and now post-COVID, I think the smartphone, which was extremely expensive at some point in time, is available at far too cheaper rates, and it will further go down as we move further in future. Apps used to be extremely heavy at some point in time. It used to grab quite a bit of a space in your smartphone. Has been now you see apps are very light, right? So over a period of time, yes, I'm sure as the cost of digitization, as I would like to call it, goes down, definitely the divide will keep on narrowing. But today, I think we can't deny the fact that there's a huge divide, and the haves and have not. There's always a wide gap between haves and have not. Unfortunately, in India, all the more. Yeah, over a period of time, I think it will go down. And again, technology will find a solution for the problems created by technology. I think that's the theme of today, I guess. Farhana, rightly, you started with the right thing.
Yeah, just
No,
one line.
sure, please,
Sorry, one liner on that.
please.
On the have and have nots, yes, but also the perception. So we do employee sentiment analysis every week. 3,000 employees it's random sampling across the world, and India gets represented because it's a sizable population. And what we realize is that the people who are working from home and the people who are working in the plants, the engagement of the people in the plants is far higher than the engagement of the people that are working from home, who have the luxury of the perceived, home environment.
I just thought I want to. I mean, my hobby is Rajesh knows. I love wildlife photography, and I have a D800. I have a D500. Both are digital. And recently, Rajesh, I bought myself a F6.
Wow.
It's a renaissance of the old. It's a roll film Nikon. I just can't get to use that F6. I mean, I've got so used to digital cameras. And every time I think why Kodak died virtually, as far as their vertical is concerned, is they just couldn't keep pace with what the customer wants. I mean, when you see a digital, I mean, you can take 1,000 pictures and not waste your time or money. You have just 37 shots. 36 is a no-brainer. 37 is, you should be knowing how to load your film to be lucky. But that's it. And if you get your ISO wrong and stuff, you're sunk. What do you guys predict in the future of companies like Kodak that are going to cease to exist or fade away if they don't digitize? And second question, what careers do you see will fade away unless they digitize? I mean, put it the other way, they say masseurs are secure, dentists are secure, but maybe not the BPO operator. So what careers do you think will fade away? What companies do you think will fade away?
So my quick response is, I don't think there's a dichotomical yes and no answer kind of stuff. So I'll give you a very interesting example from one of the medical centers in Arizona. I can't recall the name at this point in time. The very famous game of Nintendo called Wii, right? So, interestingly now, Emrana also spoke about surgeons and, the entrenchment of AI and ML into surgery. Now, those guys, in fact, they had some, trainee surgeons, and on a simulated surgery, I'm not talking about the real-time surgeries, the simulated surgeries, almost 50% of those surgeons did extremely well who were continuously playing on Nintendo Wii and another game called Marble Mania. Right, because there was some sort of the finger and of course a lot of laparoscopic kind of stuff, right? So the point that I want to drive again here is even a surgery which is relatively isolated from the impact of digitization can also have some sort of impact in terms of superiority and inferiority or whatever. I think nobody is going to be free of this impact. Everybody will have some or the other impact. The percentage may vary. For BPO, KPO, assistant, it will be probably to the tune of 80 to 85%, maybe up to 90%. In some professions, it will be maybe 15%, 20% for sure. And if one draws a graph, it will be anywhere between 15 to 18%, 80% for sure. But I think every profession is going to have a big time impact of the digital revolution for sure. Over a period of time, it will further go on increasing. It's just a matter of time, I think.
With these digitization.
Emrana is going to answer that part.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, you're on mute, Emrana.
Emrana, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't able to unmute it. Yeah. So I think just to build on what Rajesh is saying, there is an interesting chart I came across in one of the reports. I'll just read out a few titles. It says genetic diversity officer, VR immersion counselor, human network analyst, a workplace environment architect, future of work leader, chief purpose planner, distraction prevention coach, director of well-being, employee enablement. Okay, I mean, whether you consider this as fiction or whether you consider this as a possible distant reality, the fact is that jobs are going to evolve and technology is going to make new things possible. Our human understanding of what can be done, our own innovation is going to help us, really define the future that lies ahead of us. So I would just say that all of us need to demonstrate very high learning agility and have an open mind. Like we said, a growth mindset and not a fixed mindset. That's going to be really imperative to just cope up with this massive changes that we will be going through.
But just to extend that, Emrana, it's a great point you made. I mean, look at the draftsman of the past. The draftsman has probably transformed into learning CAD, AutoCAD, various Intergraph software, StatPro, can make a whole machine spin on the screen, 3D, virtual reality, all that. So jobs, like you're saying, are so, and unless the person is agile and learns that, would probably, you can't use a T-square, which we used in our mechanical drawing when we were young, or use one of those gadgets with a compass and stuff, physical compass. All that is gone. What is it that you both recommend should be done to improve that learning agility? Is it fear? Is it fear of fear? Is it something nice like gamification? Is it, gamification has its own, it can be making a person very insecure if you keep losing on the leaderboard. What is it that stimulates that adult learning in your view?
Yeah, I probably will give my personal example. I mean, I do have a 19-year-old son and a 15-year-old son. I see them, in a new, with a new technology mindset than I can ever imagine to be in. But I find it difficult to make them my reverse mentors. You know how hard it is to make your children your reverse mentors. But consciously and deliberately in the organization, I have my own reverse mentors from the millennial generation. And specifically on digital competency. Because I feel that's where the massive changes are happening. And I'm not as much in that technology world as they are. So there is a lot I can learn. So they are the masters of this era. So that's one deliberate intent, because that opens your mind and makes you believe that learning has no hierarchy, learning has no format, learning is an ongoing journey of experiences. So that's one. So it's more at a mindset level and anchoring. My belief is that yes, I have a lot to learn. I don't know many things. I think that is one orientation that helps. And the second is that be very deliberate about what you would want to learn and know. The kind of networks you get into, the kind of people you interacted with, the kind of topics you discuss, the kind of transformational energies you're putting in your organization, the choice of projects, the choice of opportunities. Even in the business space, if there is a digital transformation happening and not linked with HR, how do you still get engaged into that? Because you're kind of building your business acumen, you're partnering more strategically, and you're trying to be more opportunistic on what areas of HR you can impact in that project. I think it's a constant journey. In one line, I think it's more at a mindset level than at a capability level.
And learning can be fun.
Yeah, it is fun. Yeah. It is also a value.
Rajesh? You're on mute.
Yeah. So a very philosophical question, and I'll probably attempt from a, again, I'll return, go back to analytics and machine learning. So one of my clients, it's a small size IT company, about 3,200 people. And they have a problem, of course, recruiting performers and a usual kind of stuff he came up with. But he said that, I don't want to recruit performers. I want to recruit learnable people. So he was basically referring to something called learnability.
Right.
Now that is something, so I said, fair enough. Let me go through the entire data that you have. And fortunately, again, he shared whatever data that he had of the organization for the last about 6-7 years, right? Now, we had quite a bit of our data. Fortunately, they have been using a tool which is again one of the big 5 versions. So that was, we were lucky enough to have that. And we had a performance data, and at different points in time, in IT companies, typically you have the training. After that, again, there's an assessment and stuff like that. So we had some assessment data as well. Okay, so we did analyze this data and came up with, ultimately it boiled down to, it's not the, again, same thing what Emrana said just now. It was not boiling down to the capability, because we also had a subject test, scores of those guys had got, and of course their academics in the previous life. So it was all about big 5, the personality traits, and and I don't mind sharing, because I'm not sharing the name of the company, but it was all about high level of conscientiousness, high level of openness, low level of neuroticism, and so on and so forth. So ultimately we have given them whatever solution. But the point that I want to drive here is, it boils down to training in the areas. Now, again, it's another philosophical discussion whether you can change personality or you can't change personality. That's a different issue altogether. But I mean, he basically said that I have a set of people who are basically frozen middle, and they are the ones who are spoiling the party of the guys who are raring to go below them. So that's the answer. So again, the answer is same, what Emrana said. But I think this was the brass tacks example, which and we just concluded that particular assignment, and this is what came out of that.
Money questions?
Yeah, could you share some experiences of how we can use technology and digitization to create personalized experiences for employees?
Yeah. Rajesh, are you okay?
Yeah. Please go ahead.
I'll give an example of something that we did with Asian Paints, and now it's anyway. I mean, it's a very common thing now, but this is like a few years back. Like introduction of what was the problem? We had field force, large field force, and we didn't have a shared service concept. But the BUHR was like the whole and soul, had to give answers on the policies, work on strategic workforce planning. So you basically are that. Support on all aspects of HR needs, and we realized that we were not able to do complete justice to it because of and deliver that employee experience that that wow the employee experience of being able to answer anytime, anywhere. And so we thought, how do we leverage technology to get the solution to this, because we can't really increase our HR team size. So we introduced, we actually gave birth to Jarvis. Jarvis was a chatbot that we created, and it started off with just a policy chatbot, but then it expanded to career counseling and other facets as well. But only at a base level, not at, obviously, like we discussed, doesn't have the general intelligence to answer any and coach employees. So what we did was we made about 1,000 questions on all our policies, and all the possible questions that we knew our employees typically ask us. And that also gave us an opportunity to humanize and simplify our policies, because we realized we had not applied that lens. Because when you're trying to teach a machine policies, you also need to simplify it. You need to, you know, humanize it, because a machine is going to talk as is. It's not going to have a filter in the way it gives out the information. So it also gave us the opportunity to work on the base, humanization and simplification. And after we launched the policy, we were still skeptical how it would be received, because it's a very, very high touch organization where, you know, people talking to people, relationships matter a lot. So we were just wondering whether people will get hooked on to, you know, a bot called Jarvis rather than going and, you know, calling up one of their BUHR partners. We were very surprised. Just in about the first week, we received about 25,000 queries. And it just was surprising. In the beginning, yes, there was a lot about curiosity, like Siri gets the curiosity, etc. There was a curiosity linked phase, but this number of questions did not dramatically drop over a period of time. And we could pick a lot of insights, because this was a huge data mine that we had, and we could kind of use it to improvise our policies and our people linked decisions going forward. But what it also taught us is that when you say experience, it need not always be a person. It's catering to that need, which is more important, and catering to it when I want it. So what Jarvis did was, Jarvis was able to address that need. And instead of reading those 2 pages of the policies, I have one specific question, give me only that answer. I don't want to memorize the whole policy. I think that's what was the beauty of Jarvis. Jarvis complemented what the HR team was doing and enhanced the employee experience.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, so you know, I will share my my experience from a company called Transocean, which used to be one of the largest you know, offshore drilling companies.
Offshore rigs.
Yeah. So you know, it's very tricky, and this is 2006 or 2007. You know, bots were not in vogue at that point in time, and more importantly, most of our employees would be off, you know, about 40, anywhere between 12 to 40 knots inside the sea. So, and obviously again isolated, so completely remote. You know, each rig will have about, depending upon the size of the type of the rig, but on a smaller side, a jackup rig would have about 50 to 80 employees, and on the larger side, a drill ship will have about 210 employees. Now, exactly the same problem which Emrana spoke about, and these employees, again, I repeat, you know, these are of different type, right? From a roughneck on a ruster boat, who is probably what, a 12th standard and a 10th standard educated person, to a rig manager who would be from IIT, you know, Mumbai or you know, IIT Madras, Kharagpur, because they have ocean engineering and naval architecture. So you know, what we did is we actually, you know, there's this guy is called Harvinder. I don't know whether they're still there. With them, we created CDs of complete, you know, it's reading employee manual was a fun on that, because, you know, there were different games, and all these policies were woven into different kind of games. So it was a fun kind of thing. And we gave CD to the radio officer over there, because the RO is someone who is probably, you know, I mean, who used to be an HR, you know, person over there. And then he used to tell people to go and play these games, you know, whenever you're free, you can play these games and all. And in 6 to 8 months time, you know, we stopped actually, Emrana, contrary to your experience, you know, we stopped getting queries on policies. And, you know, these guys were on hitch. So 28 days they would be there on rig. And you know, it was really fun. So at times people used to treat that policy manual as a fun, you know, kuch karna nahi hai, to let's go and play, you know, policy. So that kind of stuff happens. So I think you know, there are, and this is when the bots didn't exist, 2006 2007 I'm talking about. So I think there are definitely ways and means of dealing with such kind of things, and bots of course is a great help, no doubt about it.
Wonderful. Over to you, Mani, and maybe last 2-3 questions and then you'll close.
Yeah, that's right. We have a couple of senior people here who would like to pose a question. I'm going to first invite Mr. M.D. Agarwal, who is also a former past president of the Bombay Management Association, long career with TCS, and now is a adjunct professor at NITI, and of course, a very, very keen person in the field of digital. M.D. Agarwal, you can take up your question, please. Just unmute and go ahead.
So maybe you can read out the question, you know, because...
No, okay, I'm not able to spot him. Okay, another question is from another colleague. formerly a CA, of course, and a former CFO of Madison
No,
World.
MD Agarwal talked about a digital strategy. I mean,
Oh, he's right
short.
there. Yeah, he's right there.
He talked about a digital strategy, referred to my point. What
Yeah,
should
MD, go
organization
ahead.
have as a digital? So, I mean, we can give it over to the speakers so that we can
Yeah.
use the time.
Now I think he's unmuted. I will not take much time. I think both panelists and Mr. Yogi has tremendously done a great job in last 1.5 hours, and brought quite a very relevant point, both in HR space and in the enterprise space. I see today the HR role, thanks to technology, digital technology, is exponential technology, which has the power to bring the exponentiality in our life, in our industry. That is what we all know about that. We see the three phases. One, as I see that, one is incremental kind of application of digital technologies. And second is the substitutions. Like analytics are being substituting MIS in management information system. And then there is something called transformative.
Yeah.
Now the challenge today in HR is that how we adopt the transformative policies, transformative route, so that the HR function not remain as a HR, it becomes the productivity house, it becomes the efficiency change, And we are seeing that the name of the HR today in many companies is not only HR, it becomes the engine for productivity of the staff, and how we transform that, a staff, stakeholders, functioning, relationship, collaboration. So I think, today a lot of, the digital technologies, thanks to digital technologies, is not a new thing. Last 15 years we are seeing in some other way. Now we have very good tools available, machine learning and deep learning. And probably, in my opinion, the HR function, which is today emerging, is if we see in next 2-3 years, it will be very different. Second question, Mr. Yogi, Shriramji, you have asked about the leadership, and both the panelists has responded to that. There is a book, Leading Digital by George Westerman and McAfee, both MIT professor, and wonderfully they have done a survey and they came out a conclusion. There are 4 quadrants of the leadership, and the top quadrant is called the digital masters. Digital master who qualify to be in the quadrant of digital master. Basically the companies are the masters. Those who qualify in the digital master, they think differently, they act differently, they perform differently. And there are 3 areas which they qualify. One is the customer engagement and experience area. Second is that operation efficiency and operation optimization. And third, of course, is the business model change. So how you qualify yourself as a company, that where in which quadrant in India, they have mentioned the Asian Paint as one of the digital masters. Asian Paint, according to, and repeatedly the author mentioned Asian Paint in many chapters, that how they have transformed that functioning of the company, and they have taken to the next level of the company using the digital technologies and digital policies. So there, I think there is action weighted from the HR side also, is what I thought I will share.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, Mani, next.
Yeah, RSR Murthy, former CFO with Madison World and chartered accountant.
Murthy, has he got a question? Has he got a question?
Yeah, he has.
Yeah. Yes, sir. I mean, one of the topics with which I'm very fascinated of late is the work-life balance. Some people may not like the phrase work-life balance, but the fact, I think, is that a number of young executives, for whatever reason, ambition or whatever, are really killing themselves. And of course, I've been in the industry for 36 years, worked quite hard. But looking back, I do question myself, was it the right approach? And I'm afraid employers are equally guilty of not taking cognizance of this important thing, which will cost the public health system as well as individuals very dearly. So my question, sir, is that, I mean, what are your views on it? How, to what extent will digitalization may bring relief to this pressures of work on people?
Any tips, Rajesh and Emrana, on how to prevent burnout through wearables, how to remain, disciplined in terms of how much time you spend with your family? besides, of course, a buzzer going off on your wearable when it's time to go home. Any thoughts on how not to get addicted to finishing that last mile stuff before answering your four-year-old kid, a question which she or he is asking you?
No, so there's one thing definitely analytics and machine learning can do is exactly the way the flight risk is calculated. On the same lines, even executive burnout. In fact, Christina Maslach has done a lot of research in that area, and she has come up with quite a few parameters of executive burnout. I'm 100% sure with the kind of data that we collect today, it's not very difficult to spot your, in fact, in all probability, your best performers could be your next target of, the burnout syndrome. So, definitely, as long as we're measuring, we can spot. But yeah, interventions, I don't think digital intervention per se can help because the more, I think, the digital gadgets, and this is my personal opinion, but digital gadgets create more stress rather than giving relief. I have said for myself that, I will not look at WhatsApp after 8:30 in the night because, just before sleeping, you will see something which is not so good. And after that, next couple of hours are gone for a toss. So I'm not sure how much relief that the digital gadgets are giving to you. But yes, definitely from the machine learning and analytics perspective, in the organizations, you can easily spot your, not easily, but yeah, certainly you can spot your probable targets of the burnout syndrome.
But you have a silly thing like a pedometer can tell you how many steps you walked. I've walked only 6,000 today. It'll tell you how many calories you've consumed. It'll tell you about your pulse rate, whether you slept properly and stuff. To that extent, I think it's okay. But whether you overworked yourself to boredom or not, probably we are a while away from that.
Yeah, we are away from that.
Next question.
Emrana, your take?
I think
sorry.
I think the same. They've articulated it very well. I just just one addition. Microsoft Outlook sends me an email every week, I think, or every fortnight, saying that you had 0 quiet days, and you spent 80% of your time in collaboration, so I think it reads the way my calendar is blocked. And also it reads, whether I have had my weekend, whether I've kind of, stopped opening my laptop. I think to that extent, it can give you signals, but what you do with that, I can delete it and dump it, put it in the bin, or do something about it with that mindful awareness. So I think the choice that again boils down to.
Sure. Dr. Lakshmi Mohan, Director, ITM Business School, Kharghar.
Yeah, hi, good evening, Emrana and Rajesh. You have given wonderful insights about how we can balance, humanization and digital in the field of HR. Of course, I love this, convention, and that's the reason I'm there every Saturday. Wonderful moderation by Mr. Yogi Sriram and Professor Mani. What I wanted to ask you is, for business schools, what are those additional courses that they can add in order to kind of align themselves to the digital world?
So I teach in one of the business schools, and definitely yes, and I teach people analytics. It's a full-fledged course, and later I realized that the same institute where I teach, they made this. In fact, not only digital. I'm quite surprised that people analytics as a course is being made mandatory and optional in both forms. So they have a degree called MBA Tech, which is basically a 5 years, both they offer specialization in engineering as well as management, but they too have a people analytics. They have a degree called MBA in, so this degree is offered by Purdue University and of course NMIMS, and they too have a people analytics and of course as an optional subject. So I think it's all over the place now, everywhere. People analytics is so much so, then definitely core analytics would be all over. So I'm sure from digitization, at least this machine learning and analytics has to be there, because the problem with the solutions is when you talk of analytics, you need to know the domain, you need to know stats, so there are over 6 or 7 different competencies are necessary in order to make the solutions perfect. Out of which at least you should know 3 or maybe 4 if possible. And for that, the business school should kind of start working on enabling their either students or in fact, if you have a course for working professionals on weekends or something like that, I think it's mandatory. There's no way out. Otherwise, they'll be very soon they'll be fall by the wayside.
I want to
Emrana is a
ask,
practitioner.
yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead, Yogi. I'll go after
I
you.
want to ask both of you one final question, and please, if I've interrupted Emrana, please go ahead with your thoughts. My final question is on engagement dashboards, and what Adobe Connect has done is it simplifies the visualization of engagement with a kind of a graphical index. It's got some kind of a speedometer thing which you see in old cars. When a presenter can actually glance through to see whether people are paying attention or fidgeting with their phones, and can actually look at participant engagement in a very proactive manner. In fact, each of the engagement indexes has something called, you can track chat activity, you can track the Q&A activity, you can track poll activity, you can do file downloads, you can do status updates and a whole lot of stuff. And there's also something called a decay factor, where there's an assumption that people are getting bored. Any thoughts on that, and any experiences on using Adobe Connect for ensuring that you're grabbing audience attention?
Yeah, Rajesh, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So Yogi, well, I don't have any experience, to be very frank with you, of Adobe Connect, but Tableau, for example, ggplot2, Plotly. So some of the data visualization tools these days that you get are far too superior compared to what we used to dabble around with, just Excel graphs and things like that. And they not only give you the realistically focused picture, but also in terms of futuristic, that what do you need to do and things like that. So I think even the predictive indexes also has come down to a data visualization level now.
Yeah.
But Adobe, I don't have any experience. But Tableau, I'm quite amazed with, where you can actually.
Yeah, it's expensive. You need a license for it, Rajesh and Emrana, but it's fascinating. A presenter, for example, in this session, we'll know if people are multitasking or whether they're looking at all three of us, all four of us with undivided attention and looking at what we're speaking. They're completely engaged based on Q&A and stuff. So it's a fascinating tool actually for those in HR.
Same like Rajesh, I have no experience of Adobe Connect, but definitely there are a huge amount of platforms that are available. Yeah. Again, what is the entire IT architecture that you have in your organization, and how do you add on bespoke systems? It's really important, because if it's not a part of your entire strategic architecture, then it can also create interface challenges. So that's the reason why, again, it boils down to the choice you make and how they complement to what strengths you have right now. So for example, we are doing in the COVID era, we have released a lot of policies, and we realized that people do not really read policy documents, etc. And people's patience is very short. So we kind of created a comic strip, and we posted it on Yammer, so that we can invite conversations around it. And what Yammer does beautifully, it actually helps us run analytics around engagement of conversations on each of these policies and pick insights. So I think definitely, like you described the Adobe Connect, it could, if it can help us to understand the engagement level of participants and help the facilitator to proactively change the course of the methodology and create more learner impact. I think it's beautiful to have, but it needs to be seen how it configures and how does it add to what the company already has.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And I guess, Mani, it's about time to let our guest speakers go and also the audience go and all of us go. It's a nice Saturday evening.
Yes, and before that, of course, on behalf of BMA, very, very grateful to Emrana and Rajesh for that wonderful sharing. Very, very meaningful suggestions, so much practical insights, and I think that made a lot of meaningful contribution to the session. As we always do, may I request that we have our digital group photograph, and may I request everyone to put on your cameras. I didn't use the word digital only today. This has become a way of life for us in BMA. And while we get our cameras on and people need 1 minute to get ready, let me grab your attention to tell you that over the next 3 weeks, we have another 6 webinars planned on every Wednesday and Friday, as we have been doing as part of the BMA offerings. All details are on the website, of course, but this includes topics like how to be healthy and wealthy, how to tackle POSH in the revised work scenarios, how to develop the brand I, that is the individual, personal worth planning, CSR in COVID times, and the impact of automation. So as you see, there are different wide range of topics. Please log on to our website. You can get plenty of information, and we look forward to have you in our learning journey. I noticed that we have 3 screens today. So please have a little bit of digital patience while my team from the Secretariat will do the honors of capturing this moment of all of us being here together.
Hang on. I want to comb my digital hair.
Oh, yes, please, please. That 1 minute was meant for all that.
Okay. I'm all set.
Yeah,
my
all
digital hair has
set.
grown
And
also.
then, of course, I will request our Honorary Treasurer, Mr. K. Narayan, who's also the President Human Resources for Raymond Group, to propose the vote of thanks after we complete this digital photograph. All set.
Thank you.
Request your best smiles. You're going to be all over the digital world tomorrow morning onwards.
Do you like my digi smile?
Yes, I prefer your real smile. So Lakshmi, you'll give me a confirm once we are done, so that I request Mr. Narayan to make the final comments and propose the vote of thanks. If your camera, yeah, thank you. If your cameras are not on, we could only read your names. Mr. Narayan,
my camera is on, no? By the way. I think my camera is on.
Absolutely.
Confirm,
on.
Lakshmi? Yeah.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
I mean, itna mehnat kiya, I combed my digital hair, I gave a digi smile after all that.
योगी आपको नाराज करेंगे तो next week आप नहीं आओगे, नहीं करेंगे. We can't take the risk.
Okay.
Mr. Narayan, over to you. Sometimes in multiple screens, it's so difficult to locate the gentleman. Just 1 second.
Gallery view, right? You're doing gallery view.
Yeah, he's there.
Yeah, hi everyone.
Hello, Narayan. Nice to see
hi,
you.
Yogi. You have a very humorous way of signing off and reminding everyone that it's a weekend. and reminding that it's time up. So I'm sure otherwise this show would have gone on for another 2 hours probably. The topic was so interesting and insightful.
Yeah.
I just loved it, and I must really thank both Emrana and Rajesh for such an insightful session on such a difficult topic. You know, we always wonder whether some of our roles would be replaced by robots in future, and which of those will be the first ones to go and become extinct. Given that, you know, this whole digital world is consuming all of us. I think the whole session was very interesting. Apart from that, also the questions were very thought-provoking. I'm sure the participants would have really enjoyed the entire session and these 2 hours conversation. Really hats off to you, Yogi, for putting up this whole
Thank you.
thing, the entire series for BMA. I know that you are a veteran and therefore you don't need any extra effort to make this happen, but you know, it is something which is to do this in a digital format. I found this very unusual and very interesting to have split this into over several sessions. So, and each Saturday seems to be more powerful than the previous one. So at the end of the complete series that we are running, this is going to be one of those blockbuster HR conventions that we ever experienced, I must say. And all thanks to your efforts. And you're anchoring it personally. So that is even more value adding for all the participants. There is palpable excitement amongst the participants to come and listen to the sessions every weekend. So I really must say that this is a great effort by everyone who has put in the thought, and also to get the speakers of the quality that audience would like to listen to. Thanks again to both Emrana and Rajesh. It's been really wonderful listening to you. I'm sure the participants would have enjoyed as well. And thanks to all the participants who spared a Saturday weekend. And as Yogi said, it's a beautiful Saturday during COVID times, even though it is a lockdown, but everybody is using their brains very usefully to enrich themselves from whichever profession they are. So thanks everyone, and on behalf.
Did we lose him?
Yeah, we lost him. Narayan?
I'll fill in the blanks. On behalf of BMA, please stay safe and be well and enjoy your weekend. I'll tell Narayan I set the digital context and the digital ending that way.
Yeah,
bye,
thank
guys.
you everybody, and look forward to have you with us for our other sessions. We are soon heading for our Golden Jubilee in terms of the webinars that we've conducted from April 1st, and we look forward to you being there with us to celebrate this occasion. Thank you again, Emrana, Rajesh, and Yogi. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend. Stay safe and stay blessed.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.